Hello, brothers and sisters. Thanks for joining again. Right now, it looks like the US and the UK governments are having a little bit of a disagreement. It's not been a good week for the special relationship, with the BBC admitting to an error in judgment in editing Trump's speech to really make it look like he incited the January 6th riot. And whether you do or you don't think he did, they definitely edited his speech in a way to make him say things that he didn't say, to make it look like he did incite that riot. And then I've just heard that the UK has decided to pause intelligence sharing with the US on suspected drug vessels in the Caribbean. Really? So Britain is not sharing intelligence with the US? Let's read more. Rare rupture between military allies comes as concerns grow over Trump administration's lethal sinking of boats. Yeah, a lot of people do think it's illegal for him to be going and doing that. Britain has suspended the sharing of intelligence with the U.S. on suspected drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean amid concerns information supplied may be used to engage in lethal military strikes by American forces. Yeah, last time I saw, he'd blown up 10 or 12 boats that he claimed were smuggling drugs in international waters. And a lot of these drugs are going to end up in the US, and so he decided to blow up the boats. And his justification for that is he says that these are terrorists driving these boats of the drug gang Tren de Aragua that's based in Venezuela. And so it's okay to kill terrorists in international waters. Obama killed loads of terrorists. Bush killed loads of terrorists with drones. So Trump is now doing the same. And he actually has parked a fleet off the coast of Venezuela. So he's making Maduro nervous that the U.S. might actually be about to invade Venezuela as well because of Venezuela's support of drug trafficking. So that's his pretext anyway. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what he's doing. So it looks like the UK thinks that's illegal. Let's watch this video here.
We attacked a submarine, and that was a drug-carrying submarine built specifically for the transportation of massive amounts of drugs. Just so you understand, this was not an innocent group of people. I don't know too many people that have submarines, and that was an attack on a drug-carrying, loaded-up submarine. Yeah.
Mr. President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What could we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Trump is so unfiltered. It's great. That's one of the reasons people like Trump. He's sort of like the common man. He uses very plain speech, not politician speech. So you heard Trump saying why he was doing what he was doing. He's blown up one submarine, and regular folk don't have submarines. This was a drug-carrying submarine. Completely unapologetic about it. And yeah, Maduro has tried to calm Trump down, but Trump's not having any of it. Everything Maduro's offered him hasn't been enough so far. The UK, which retains oversight on several island territories in the Caribbean, has long shared intelligence with the US about the movements of suspect vessels traveling from Latin America so they can be seized by the US Coast Guard. But CNN, which first reported the story, said the British intelligence sharing relating to possible drug-related shipping had been paused shortly after the U.S. began a campaign of lethal strikes in September. Okay, so this has been going on over a month, but see, now the problem is it's gone public. And so because it's public, it's now a political problem for the president. Responding to CNN's report, a UK government spokesman said, "It is our long-standing policy to not comment on intelligence matters." Yeah, and I'm sure the U.S. is the same. An estimated 76 people have been killed by the U.S. in 19 attacks. Wow, I thought it was only 10, 12. So 19 attacks on small boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific that were allegedly involved in narco trafficking. The Trump administration's claimed drug smugglers can be killed legally because they are combatants in an armed conflict with the U.S. Yeah, he's already named these guys as international terrorists, which he is completely legal to do. And again, that's his pretext for being able to blow them up. And the U.S. Navy has had a long history of fighting pirates and smugglers and enforcing customs. So this really is nothing new to the U.S., but Perhaps it's against international law. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. However, intelligence or other military assistance would not be given to an ally, including the U.S., if the U.K. had its own legal concerns about how information supplied might be used in the operations. Similar questions were raised before the raid by US B-2 bombers on Iran's underground nuclear enrichment site at Fordo. In June, when it was believed the mission was going to be launched from the UK military base of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, in the end, the bombers flew from Missouri. Another sign of strains in the US-UK intelligence relationship under the Trump administration was reported by the New York Times, which said that Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, had personally promised his MI5 counterpart, Ken McCallum, he would protect the job of London-based U.S. surveillance officer while visiting the UK in May. The position was axed shortly afterwards, forcing the FBI agent to return to the U.S. MI5 officials were incredulous, the newspaper reported, though British sources declined to comment. The FBI also did not comment. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. All right, so civilian deaths from airstrikes in the Caribbean. Oh, wow, one of them had 14 people on board. He's been blowing up boats that have been identified as related with drug smuggling. And if you see the drone footage he's put out, these are not fishing boats. They definitely have barrels of something in them. They're very high-speed boats carrying barrels of something. So definitely not fishing boats. So let's just watch one of these drug boats. Trump and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, have been putting out unclassified videos of these attacks. So here's one of these alleged drug boats. Again, this is not a fishing boat. This is a high-powered speedboat. And there's something under this tarp here in the middle. It looks brown or black. Can't really see what's under there. But let's watch this video. So he's done this like 19 times, I think they said. Some of the videos you can actually see barrels without a tarp over them. And as you can see, they've got pretty good footage here. I'm sure the military intelligence guys can tell what's in that boat, and they've probably tracked it on the ground and seen what was delivered to that shipyard. And the congressman who made the comment that the soldiers were in violation of domestic and international law and at risk, the American ones are definitely not at risk because this is all in international waters, so it would only be federal law in America, and Trump could just pardon them. So he is the commander-in-chief. They have to follow his orders as long as it's a lawful order. It's true. But American military lawyers are going to say this is lawful. Because they're going to say these are classified as terrorists. So that's the pretext. So now we've seen the video. The attacks have coincided with a U.S. military buildup, including the arrival in the Caribbean of the U.S. Navy's largest warship, the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, and its supporting strike group, amid rising tensions with the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro. That deployment raises further dilemma for the UK, as a senior Royal Navy officer is by tradition permanently deployed on a U.S. destroyer, the USS Winston Churchill, which is part of that strike group. Okay. Lieutenant Commander Owen Long from Boston in Lincolnshire is serving as navigator on the Churchill. In September, the Royal Navy officer navigated the guided missile destroyer, which flies the Royal Navy's white ensign alongside the U.S. flag on ceremonial occasions into Portsmouth for an official visit to the UK. Joaquin Castro, a Democratic congressman from Texas and ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and Subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere, said President Trump is ordering the U.S. Navy to conduct extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean and East Pacific and inciting a potential illegal war with Venezuela. In doing so, Trump is subjecting U.S. service members to serious criminal liability. That's all nonsense. And in case anyone didn't know, the U.S. did not sign the International Criminal Court Treaty, so The Hague can't bring charges against the U.S. and U.S. service members for following Trump's orders. His actions now seem to put Allied service members, including British sailors, at risk of operating outside British and international law. Castro said, the United Kingdom has a choice on whether they want to participate in this illegal war President Trump is pulling them into. I sincerely hope they choose not to participate. It does definitely put that service member at risk, as the International Criminal Court could bring charges against him for participating. And as the UK, I believe, is a signatory, that does put him in the UK in jeopardy. Asked about Lieutenant Commander Long's deployment, a Royal Navy spokesman said, Armed Forces personnel regularly serve on exchange programs with our key military partners around the world. British naval sources said that a legal review would normally be conducted before a British sailor was involved in a U.S.-led kinetic operation. On Sunday, the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced the bombing of 2 boats. He said that 6 male narco-terrorists were killed in the strikes on the boats that were operated by designated terrorist organizations. Several legal analysts have said that the attacks on boats were extrajudicial killings, and an unprovoked attack on Venezuela would be a further clear violation of international law. Una Hathaway, the president-elect of the American Society of International Law and former Pentagon legal advisor, said criminal liability may arise for those involved in the attacks. I know they know what they are doing is wrong. If they refuse, they disobey orders. If they do it, then they're violating international and domestic law. The extent that the UK is involved in some way with its personnel, or if it's providing munitions or components of weapons that are being used as operations that could have legal implications for the United Kingdom, said Brian Finucane, a senior advisor of the U.S. program at the International Crisis Group. There's no serious argument there is anyone other than civilians on these small boats, despite what the U.S. government says. So that should be an obvious concern if the UK or other countries who could in some ways be supporting these lethal strikes. Some countries would also need to think about supporting a potential act of aggression against Venezuela. A U.S. invasion or even airstrikes on the country would be a clear violation of international law. All right, so what do I think? I think this is a foolish move by the UK. The UK needs to be fully supportive of the U.S. military in all matters. It's just how it is. There are a lot of Americans who feel the U.S. shouldn't be involved in foreign wars, and we shouldn't be involved in NATO or the UN. And like it or not, the UK depends on the U.S. for its protection. The UK military has less than 150,000 active duty troops across all branches. And so the UK could not actually fight a real war with anyone. So if the Russians really did decide to attack the UK in any significant way, the only response by all of Europe, really, not just the UK, is the US defense. So annoying the US militarily in this matter is a foolish move. And now that it's become public knowledge, internet people like me, or like real influencers like Laura Loomer, are calling for the US to cut intelligence sharing with the UK. I might even go further. I actually grew up on the RAF bases of Mildenhall and Lakenheath, which I believe are the 2 biggest bases still in the UK. And there's about 10,000 US troops stationed in the UK. Well, Lakenheath has got a fighter wing with F-15s and I think F-35s. And then Mildenhall is a support base. It's got special operations and refueling and such, which is all public. If Trump gets annoyed, he might just decide to pull a couple of those squadrons from that wing back. And there's somewhere on the order of 250 aircraft in the UK. If the UK cannot fully support the US militarily, that's fine. The U.S. should start pulling forces out. If the UK wants to become a Muslim country and do Sharia law, if the UK doesn't want to have freedom of speech anymore, if the UK won't let people protest and won't do anything about anti-Semitism and close down soccer games for Jewish folk because of their safety, or arrest people because they have Jewish symbols for their own protection, because they might cause a public disorder offense just walking near a Palestinian protest. These are things that Vance alluded to that don't align with U.S. values. So why should the U.S. protect a country that no longer shares its values? The same goes for Europe. When Norwegian companies are saying they won't refuel U.S. shipping, why should the U.S. protect the U.K. and Europe? Just how it is. And you can get mad about it all you want, but a lot of Americans feel this way. Now, the U.S. does get a lot of benefit from having troops positioned in these countries. These countries get huge economic benefits. The U.S. pays money. The locals living in Suffolk around Lakenheath and Mildenhall, a lot of them have jobs on those bases, and a lot of the service members contribute to the local economy by buying things from local shops. So it would be a massive economic hit to the UK if the US drew down forces. And again, a lot of Americans feel we should be out, that NATO and the UN does really not align with our needs anymore. And I don't think Trump will do that, but he might send a message by not sharing intel. Or maybe he doesn't pull the whole wing out, but he pulls one of the squadrons out as a show of disapproval. If he did, I think the British government would go apeshit. There is no longer a special relationship. The UK is no longer the US's number one ally, not with this Labour government for sure. So UK, be careful. You're going down a bad path with the US. And if you don't want to be supportive of the US, is fine, but maybe the US will take its toys and go home. Hey, let me know what you think. Did I get this right? Did I get this wrong? Let me know in the comment. If you like this, like and subscribe. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Thanks. Bye.